Imagine sitting at your kitchen table. It's like 7:15 in the morning.
And the coffee is definitely getting cold.
Right, right. Cold coffee. The house is completely quiet, and you are just staring at your laptop screen.
We've all been there.
Yeah. And on that screen is a drafted email. Maybe it's to a potential mentor or, a pitch for a project you care deeply about.
Something with high stakes.
Exactly. It's an email that could fundamentally expand your career. And all you have to do is move the mouse 2 inches and click send.
Just one click.
Just one click. And yet you are physically, inexplicably paralyzed. Like you literally cannot do it.
So what do you do instead?
Well, you open a new tab, right? You
Yeah.
check the news. You rationalize to yourself that you should probably wait until Tuesday afternoon because, I don't know, engagement metrics are better then.
Right, the classic Tuesday afternoon excuse.
Yeah. You tell yourself you're lazy or that you're just self-sabotaging. But according to the massive stack of sources we are diving into today, you actually aren't lazy. And you aren't breaking.
You're really not.
You are just essentially standing in the wrong room.
It is such a profound reframing of human resistance, honestly, because we spend so much time in personal development trying to force ourselves through doorways.
Oh, constantly.
Right, trying to hack our productivity or willpower our way into taking action. But what we are looking at today argues that if the psychological architecture of the room you're standing in is built on fear,
Or survival.
exactly, survival, then the door to expansion simply will not open. You just cannot forcefully push a door if the frame itself is completely warped.
So for you, the learner listening right now, this is really where the rubber meets the road. We have spent our previous deep dives building this massive, intricate scaffolding of understanding.
A lot of blueprints.
So many blueprints. We've been poring over the psychological frameworks, debating the load-bearing walls of how to construct a meaningful life. But today, our mission is completely different.
It's a huge pivot.
It is. We are looking at a Group 9 double feature today. So that's chapters 29, 30, and 31, the Interludes. And this incredibly startling transition into what the source material calls the Roman numeral chapters.
Which is just a wild structural shift.
It really is. We are moving from the architecture to the animation today. We are tearing the scaffolding down, and we are finally going to inhabit the building.
It's the ultimate transition, really. We are shifting from accumulating tools to actually mastering the ones you already have.
Yeah.
Think of it like being a musician. We spent all this time, tuning the individual instruments, learning the scales.
Studying the sheet music of personal transformation.
Right. But at some point, the rehearsal has to end.
Mm.
Today, we stop looking at the isolated parts and we start playing the whole symphony.
I love that.
And it's a profound, terrifying, and just absolutely necessary shift from learning about your life to actually living it.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to even begin to understand the rooms we stand in, or the vast psychological universe we inhabit, the sources insist we have to start with the closest, most immediate threshold of all.
Which is our own skin.
Our own skin. The text introduces this concept of the fivefold path of embodiment. And it makes a claim right out of the gate that I honestly initially found really tough to swallow.
What was the block for you?
Well, it says the body is the creator, that it is the ultimate interface with reality. And I have to push back on that a bit, or at least I did at first.
Because of how we're conditioned.
Yeah, because for so long, the prevailing wisdom, and honestly my own default operating system, has viewed the mind as the CEO and the body as just like the vehicle.
The meat suit?
The meat suit, right.
Yeah.
Hauling the brain from meeting to meeting. I figured if I'm trying to run high-end software, like all these complex cognitive frameworks we analyze, my brain is doing the processing.
And the body is just the hardware.
Exactly. The monitor. If my monitor is turned off, the software still runs in the background, doesn't it?
Yeah, that is the classic Cartesian split right there. I think, therefore I am.
Right.
It assumes the mind is the absolute only seat of reality. But the source material completely upends that analogy.
It tears it down.
Totally. The body isn't a passive monitor displaying the mind's brilliance. The body is the environment in which the mind actually exists.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. If you are disconnected from your physical sensation, you are not actually interfacing with reality at all. You are interfacing with a simulation.
A projection.
Exactly. You aren't living in life. You are living in a cognitive projection about life. So the fivefold path outlines these 5 interconnected practices that bring this ultimate interface fully online.
moving you from existing as just a floating brain.
Right, to being a deeply integrated organism.
And what's interesting is how mechanical this path actually is. I mean, the first element of the fivefold path is sensation.
Which sounds simple.
It sounds so simple. The text describes this as the practice of actually feeling your body from the inside out. But the crucial concept here is what the author calls sensory delay.
That is such an important term.
It is, because modern productivity culture essentially trains us to develop sensory delay.
Oh, it rewards it.
It rewards it, yeah. We get a gold star for ignoring our physical needs to hit a deadline. So by the time we actually notice the body, it's not some subtle whisper of tension in the jaw.
No, it's a screaming migraine.
Right. A migraine or a blown out lower back or just total absolute adrenal burnout.
Precisely. And the physiological mechanism behind this is interoception.
An interoception.
Yeah, which is your nervous system's ability to perceive the internal state of your body. When you habitually ignore those subtle signals, your brain essentially prunes those neural pathways.
It just turns the volume down.
It turns it way down because you've proven you're only going to respond to the screen anyway.
Wow.
So sensation, as a deliberate practice, is the rehabilitation of interoception. It's sitting at your desk and noticing the specific temperature of your hands.
Or how your feet are resting on the floor.
Exactly. It forces the brain to remap the physical territory in real time.
Which naturally leads into the second path, which is breath. And look, take a deep breath is like the oldest cliche in the self-help book.
It really is. People roll their eyes.
They do. But the text doesn't treat breath as a relaxation technique here. It treats it as a structural override.
Yes.
It's described as the power source, like the Ctrl-Alt-Delete for your autonomic nervous system.
That's the perfect way to phrase it.
Because my reading of this is that it's less about feeling zen and more about mechanically forcing a biological shift.
That distinction is so vital. It is entirely mechanical. Your autonomic nervous system is largely involuntary, right? Heart rate, digestion, pupil dilation.
Stuff you don't think about.
Right. But the breath is the one function that is both involuntary and voluntary.
Oh, that's true.
It is literally the only manual lever you have to reach into the automatic machinery.
So how do you pull the lever?
Well, when you consciously slow your exhale so that it is longer than your inhale, you are physically stimulating the vagus nerve.
And what does that do?
That nerve sends a chemical signal to the brain that the environment is safe, which forcibly shifts your system out of sympathetic fight-or-flight activation and into parasympathetic rest and digest.
You are literally changing the power supply to the hardware.
Exactly. You're rebooting it.
Okay, so if breath powers the system down and stabilizes the baseline, how do we start moving through the world without immediately spiking our cortisol again?
Which brings us to the third path.
Right, movement. And the sources make a really sharp distinction here. They separate movement from exercise, which is just a fascinating paradigm shift for me.
It is, because we usually conflate the two.
Totally. Exercise is framed here as largely disembodied and external. It's, closing the rings on your Apple Watch, tracking your heart rate, looking in the mirror, pushing through the pain.
Very metric-driven.
Exactly. But embodied movement is entirely internal. There's this specific practice mentioned called the morning flow.
I love the morning flow.
And it's not a rigid P90X routine or even a structured yoga class. It's literally standing in your living room for 5 minutes, closing your eyes, and asking your physical form, what do you actually want to do right now?
And that question, what do you want to do right now, is incredibly uncomfortable for people who are used to dictating terms to their bodies.
Exactly. The first time I tried to conceptualize that, my brain immediately tried to choreograph the movement.
It wants to take over.
It does. It wanted to say, okay, we should stretch the hamstrings now because, that's optimal for a morning routine.
Right, checking a box.
But the text says you have to let the body lead the conversation. You might just stand there and sway. You might shake out your wrists. You might literally just lie on the floor.
Just flop on the rug.
Yeah. It asks the mind to step down from the CEO position for just 5 minutes and just listen to the raw physical intelligence of the organism.
Because that raw physical intelligence holds data the mind just doesn't have access to. The body stores emotional and physiological tension in the fascia, in the muscle memory.
So the movement releases it.
Exactly. Embodied movement allows the system to discharge that tension without the mind needing to analyze or categorize it, which flows perfectly into the fourth path, which is stillness.
Right.
If movement is discharging tension, Stillness is the diagnostic mode.
And I want to be really clear here. For the learner listening, stillness isn't pitched as a 30-minute transcendent meditation where you empty your mind completely.
No, not at all.
The sources describe it more like pulling your car over to check the dashboard, because modern life is a state of constant external motion and internal cognitive noise.
Just nonstop.
Yeah, so stillness is just a deliberate pause to run a system diagnostic.
Right, from a neurological standpoint, constant external focus keeps the brain's task-positive network engaged. You're always solving, always reacting to the next thing.
Always putting out fires.
Always. Stillness allows that task-positive network to finally power down, and it engages the default mode network, which is where integration, memory consolidation, and deep insight actually occur.
So you aren't doing nothing.
No, you are allowing the system to update its software.
Which is so crucial. And finally, that brings us to the fifth path, expression. Now, when I first saw the word expression, I assumed it meant creative output.
Like painting or writing.
Yeah, making a podcast, whatever. But the text treats it as something much more foundational. It's the physics of taking up space. It's authentic action.
It is the output of the previous 4 steps.
Mm-hmm.
Expression is, it's looking someone in the eye and saying no without immediately offering 3 paragraphs of apologetic justification.
Oh, that's so hard to do.
It's incredibly hard.
Yeah.
It's sitting in a boardroom and not physically shrinking your shoulders to make the aggressive person next to you feel more comfortable.
Wow.
Expression is letting your internal truth, which you've accessed through sensation, breath, movement, and stillness, move through you into the physical world completely unaltered.
Okay, so when these 5 paths are active simultaneously, you stop being a ghost haunting your own life. You are fully online.
You're really here.
But here is where the source material takes a massive leap, and this genuinely shifted my perspective. Once you are fully embodied, once that hardware is entirely online, you realize that your body doesn't actually end where your skin ends.
This is the transition into the relational field.
Yes.
We tend to view ourselves as isolated biological units, right? Just bouncing around in empty space. But the text argues that the space between people isn't empty at all.
It's active.
Very active.
Mm-hmm.
It is an energetic, biological, and psychological medium. It's an invisible but completely undeniable current that carries emotion, intention, and physiological state.
To make this tangible for the learner, imagine walking into an office conference room where 2 colleagues just had a vicious whispered argument.
Oh, we've all walked into that room.
Yeah, and by the time you open the door, they are silent. They might even be looking at their phones, pretending everything is totally fine.
Nothing to see here.
Right, but the air is thick. You can feel the static electricity in the room. Your own heart rate might tick up slightly before anyone even says a single word. Or consider the exact opposite scenario. A team meeting is totally spiraling. Deadlines are missed, people are getting really defensive, voices are rising, blame is just being passed around the table.
Complete chaos.
Chaos. And then one person, someone who has actually done the work of the 5-fold path, someone deeply rooted in their physical sensation, they simply take a breath.
Yeah.
They don't yell over the noise, they just ask a calm, highly attuned question. And within seconds, the entire room stabilizes. The collective temperature drops.
What you were describing there is the biology of co-regulation.
Co-regulation.
Yes. And it's driven primarily by mirror neurons and a subconscious process called neuroception.
Okay, what is neuroception?
Neuroception is your nervous system's subconscious ability to scan the environment for cues of safety or danger. We act like a biological Wi-Fi network.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Our nervous systems are constantly broadcasting and receiving signals. So in that spiraling meeting you mentioned, everyone's neuroception is picking up threat, 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 which triggers a cascading sympathetic response.
So people get defensive because their biology literally believes they are under attack.
Exactly.
So when that one grounded person breathes, they are essentially broadcasting a massive safety signal on the network.
Exactly. Think about when a baby is crying frantically. A truly regulated parent doesn't yell at the baby to calm down.
Right. That would just make it worse.
Exactly. The parent holds the child, anchors their own physical form, and breathes deeply. The baby's erratic nervous system literally entrains to the parent's grounded rhythmic nervous system.
Wow.
The baby calms because the environment dictates safety. And we do this as adults all day long, mostly unconsciously.
So the text formalizes this interaction by breaking the fields we interact in into 3 distinct categories, right?
Yes, the 3 fields.
Okay, so the first is the transactional field. This is surface level interaction, like you and the barista making your coffee.
Right.
It's polite, it's brief, it relies on social scripts, and it doesn't require deep vulnerability or attunement.
Then you move into the relational field. This one is connection-based and reciprocal. It's your friendships, your close colleagues, your family members.
People you have shared history with.
Exactly. There's shared history and mutual influence. And finally, the highest tier is the transformational field.
Okay.
This is deep, catalytic, highly vulnerable interaction, close, intimate partnerships, profound mentorships, moments of deep therapeutic breakthrough.
And this is where the sources introduce the math of the field, which I found completely fascinating because it finally put a logical structure to relationship dynamics that always felt really nebulous to me.
Literal math.
Literal math. They propose a literal equation. Field capacity equals the capacity of person A plus the capacity of person B multiplied by the synergy factor.
The synergy factor is the multiplier of human connection.
Yeah.
It explains why two brilliant, highly capable people can sometimes form a team that produces absolute garbage.
Yes. Because if the synergy factor is less than 1, you have interference.
Right.
I think about past relationships or like certain project teams where person A and person B constantly trigger each other's unresolved anxiety or competitive instincts.
They just clash.
They constantly clash. Even if they are individually bringing 100 units of capacity, their interaction triggers defensive postures. So the synergy factor drops to, say, 0.5. Suddenly, the relationship makes them less than the sum of their parts.
But if the synergy factor is greater than 1, if it's synergistic,
Right.
1 plus 1 doesn't equal 2. It equals 5 or 10. They amplify each other's clarity, creativity, and grounding.
This raises a really important question, though. How do you mechanically increase that synergy factor? Because I feel like the default human strategy when a relationship is experiencing interference is to just try and control the other person.
To manage their behavior.
Right, which has a negative success rate. I mean, if I walk into that chaotic meeting room and my own heart rate is at 120 beats per minute and I'm secretly furious that everyone is panicking,
Yeah.
I could read from the most perfectly scripted, highly evolved leadership manual in the world. I could say the exact right calming words. But it won't work, will it? Because my physiological broadcast is still panic and anger.
Exactly. The field always listens to the nervous system, not the vocabulary.
Wow.
If your words say peace, but your biology screams threat, the other person's mirror neurons will respond to the threat every single time.
Right.
Which brings us to the absolute golden rule of the relational field. You cannot regulate a system you are a part of if you haven't regulated yourself first.
Wow. Okay, I want to sit with that for a second. You cannot regulate a system you are a part of if you haven't regulated yourself first.
It's foundational.
So improving the synergy factor isn't about fixing the other person at all. It relies on 3 pillars the text outlines: attunement, safety, and mutual visibility.
Yes.
Attunement is the capacity to actually receive what the other person is transmitting without simultaneously formulating your rebuttal.
Which is so common. We just wait for our turn to speak.
We do. Safety is providing a consistent, non-judgmental holding space. And mutual visibility is the terrifying act of letting your own guard down so you can be seen while fully witnessing them.
And notice how those 3 pillars are completely impossible if you haven't practiced the 5-fold path first.
Oh, true.
You cannot attune to someone else if you have sensory delay in your own body. You cannot provide safety if your breath is trapped in your upper chest, signaling panic. The relational field is entirely dependent on the embodiment of the individuals within it.
Okay, so we've tuned the physical body. We've zoomed out slightly to see how 2 or more bodies interact to create a relational field. But the sources don't stop there. They zoom out again, all the way.
To the macro level.
Right. And
Yeah.
2 people interacting create a field. What happens when billions of people, entire environments, and global ecosystems interact? The math scales up to reality itself.
It does. And it reveals that the architecture of reality is fractal.
A fractal universe. For anyone who hasn't gone down a Wikipedia rabbit hole on fractals recently, it essentially means the microscopic pattern mirrors the macroscopic pattern exactly.
Right.
The sources use this incredible imagery. Like if you look at the complex branching veins on a single tiny fern leaf, they mimic the exact shape and structure of the entire giant fern branch.
Yes.
Or the coastline paradox in mathematics, how the jagged, irregular shape of a continent looks exactly the same, whether you are looking at it from a satellite in orbit or standing on the beach looking at a single rock formation.
The pattern repeats at every scale.
It's mind-blowing.
It is. But what's really fascinating here is how the text applies this mathematical truth to human behavior and purpose, using the metaphor of an ant colony.
Oh, I loved this part.
Yeah, if you get down on your hands and knees and watch a single ant, its movements seem erratic, almost chaotic. That single ant has absolutely no concept of the multi-year grand strategy of the colony.
Right, it doesn't know the master plan.
Exactly. It doesn't know why the colony is moving north to avoid a flood next season. It simply lacks the cognitive capacity to see the big picture.
But the crucial point is, it doesn't need to see the big picture.
Precisely. The ant just plays its highly specific, localized note with total integrity. It reacts to the pheromones directly in front of it. It carries the one crumb it is capable of carrying. It maintains the immediate tunnel it is standing in.
Doing its one job.
Right. And by doing its highly specific, localized job with total alignment to its immediate reality, it contributes flawlessly to the massive, complex survival architecture of the whole colony. The micro creates the macro.
So what does this all mean for us? For me, reading this section brought this immense wave of psychological relief.
How so?
Well, because the implication is that you don't have to carry the weight of the entire world on your shoulders. I feel like we suffer so much modern anxiety because we feel we need to know the grand, cosmic, multi-year strategy of our lives or of society itself just to make a correct decision today.
Oh, constantly. We paralyze ourselves with it.
Yes. But the fractal nature of reality says no. You just have to carry your own aliveness. You just have to tune your specific instrument, inhabit your local environment, and play your note with integrity. If the micro is aligned, the macro takes care of itself.
It completely relieves the burden of omniscience. And it brings us to this vital concept of state-dependent reality.
State-dependent reality.
Yeah. In the personal development space, people often deeply misunderstand what alignment actually means. They treat it like a forceful act of manifestation.
Like vision boards and wishing really hard.
Exactly. They think alignment is standing out in a pouring rainstorm, closing your eyes, and stubbornly shouting at the sky, "I demand sunshine, I manifest a sunny day."
Right, trying to brute force the universe to bend to your specific preference.
But true alignment, in a fractal reality, is acknowledging the objective truth of the rainstorm and putting on a raincoat.
Ah.
It's accepting the terrain you are actually standing on, rather than the terrain you wish you had. It's not about forcing a signal to exist. It's about tuning your internal receiver to the reality that is already occurring.
Okay.
When you are fragmented, stressed, and living in a projection, you are like radio static. You repel the signal of your life. But when you are integrated and embodied, you resonate. You catch the signal.
Okay, here's where we hit the absolute crux of this deep dive. Conceptually, everything we've just talked about is beautiful and logical.
Right.
We know how to tune the hardware of the body. We understand how to regulate our nervous systems to improve the synergy factor of the relational field. We grasp the immense relief of the fractal universe that if we just play our note, the symphony takes care of itself. So,
There it comes.
why do we still get stuck?
The million-dollar question.
Literally. Let's go back to that 7:15 a.m. scenario I brought up at the very beginning.
A cold coffee in the email?
Yes. I am sitting at my kitchen table. I am embodied. I understand the relational field. I know my microscopic action of sending this email serves the macroscopic growth of my career. I have all the knowledge.
So what's the problem?
Exactly. Why am I still completely paralyzed? Why can't I click send?
Because knowledge is not integration.
Oof.
Knowing the architecture of a building doesn't mean you know how to unlock its doors. And this is where the source material introduces arguably its most sophisticated, mind-bending framework.
The threshold song.
The threshold song. It is a nested, multidimensional architecture of human resistance. It perfectly explains why knowing what to do is rarely enough to actually do it.
So the threshold song, the text uses a doorway metaphor to explain this, but it nests the concepts kind of like Russian nesting dolls. Each layer holds the one inside it.
Exactly.
Let's break down these layers thoroughly because this fundamentally changed how I view my own procrastination and fear.
Let's start with the most visible layer. The first layer is the door. Right. The door represents the immediate action you are trying to take. Sending the email, initiating the hard conversation with your partner, sitting down to write the first page of a novel, or even just going to the gym.
So it's the physical event,
Yes.
but a door can't just float in empty space, right?
Yeah.
It is held by the thresh or the door frame. The text frames the thresh as the immediate guardian of the gate.
Yes.
In our psychological experience, the thresh is the acute, immediate resistance. It's the sudden tightness in your chest. It's the rapid spike in your sympathetic nervous system.
The sudden anxiety.
Exactly. Or it's the sudden, overpowering urge to check your phone, or the clever rationalization your brain invents that you should, wait until tomorrow when you're more rested.
That acute resistance, the thresh, is what most people try to fight. They try to use willpower to smash through the doorframe.
Just push harder.
Right. But if we look deeper, what holds the doorframe? The frame is built into a wall, which is part of a room. The room is the broader context you are operating within. It could be a physical state like profound sleep deprivation, or more often it is an emotional or cultural context.
Give me an example of that.
Well, a workplace culture that actively punishes mistakes is a room of fear. You're operating inside that room.
Okay, so the door is held by the thresh is held by the room. But then it goes one layer deeper to the architect of the space. Who built the room?
Right.
The room is held by the handler.
And the handler is the core. It is the deep, often unconscious belief, historical trauma, or conditioned narrative that designed the room in the first place.
It's the blueprint.
It is the invisible rule you live your life by. For example, a handler might be a deeply ingrained childhood belief that says, I must always be 3 steps ahead of what might go wrong in order to be safe.
Oh, wow.
Or, if I allow myself to be truly visible, I will be criticized and abandoned.
And then finally, the text notes that the handler is held by the handler of handlers.
Right, which is described as mystery or reality itself.
The ultimate holding environment of the universe, which we just kind of have to surrender to.
Exactly.
But let's apply this nested architecture to our specific 7:15 a.m. standoff. I am staring at the email to the mentor. I can't hit send. My default narrative is, I am lazy, I am self-sabotaging, I just need to drink more coffee and push harder.
And that narrative is the exact definition of fighting the door.
Yeah.
It's white-knuckling. You are treating the problem as a lack of force.
Right.
But if we analyze this using the threshold song, the entire paradigm shifts. The door is the email. The thresh is that sudden wave of nausea and the urge to distract yourself with the news.
Yeah.
The room you are sitting in is an emotional context completely designed to avoid rejection at all costs. And the handler that built that room.
What's the handler?
It's a core unexamined belief that says, if this mentor ignores me, it definitively proves I'm an imposter and I do not belong in this industry.
Wow. So, I am trying to send an email of profound expansion, vulnerability, and growth, but I am trying to execute that action from inside a room that was fundamentally designed for survival and hiding.
And that is the absolute crux of the issue. You cannot send an expansion email from a survival room.
Just doesn't work.
It defies the physics of the psyche. If you try to push the door harder, if you just rely on brute willpower, the door frame will simply warp.
The resistance just mutates?
Exactly. It mutates into a panic attack. Or you'll send an email that is so defensively worded it sabotages the connection anyway. The room itself will not support the action.
Right.
The text describes this as the fourth dimension. We understand length, width, and height. But this is the dimension of contextual depth and holding.
So what is the solution? If pushing the door doesn't work, how do I actually send the email?
You have to become the architect. You stop asking, how do I force myself through this door?
Yeah.
And you start asking, what is the context holding this resistance in place?
You look at the room.
Right. You bypass the door and address the handler. You use the five-fold path we talked about to regulate your nervous system. You sit with the physical sensation of the fear.
Sensation, breath, stillness.
Yes, you acknowledge the handler, that deep fear of rejection, and you literally thank it for trying to keep you safe all these years.
Wow.
And then, consciously, you choose to step into a different room. You build a room based on sovereignty, on the belief that your worth is not dictated by one person's reply.
And then what happens?
When you address the handler, the architecture of the room changes. When the room changes, the thresh relaxes its grip. And the door just opens. It requires almost no effort at all.
It's the ultimate paradigm shift. You stop acquiring productivity tools to bash doors down, and you start understanding the structural integrity of the building itself.
Exactly.
And when you finally reach this realization in the source material, when you stop fighting the doorways and finally integrate this deep psychological architecture into your bones, it triggers the most incredible, jarring, formatting glitch in the entire text.
Oh, this part is brilliant. It is a highly deliberate structural choice by the author.
It really is.
You read through 31 chapters of intense foundational work. You are mastering the embodiment, the relational field, the fractal math, the threshold song. You turn the page, fully expecting chapter 32 to give you the next tool.
And it isn't there. You hit a page that just has a giant stark Roman numeral I, chapter 1, again.
Right.
I remember staring at it, flipping back and forth, literally thinking the publisher made a collating error. Like, why this sudden format change? Why throw the reader back to the beginning?
Because it isn't a return.
Well,
It's an elevation. Arabic numerals 1, 2, 3, up through 31 inherently imply linear accumulation.
they imply progress.
They represent step-by-step, sequential learning. I acquire tool 1, then I master tool 2, then I stack tool 3 on top of it.
Yeah.
I am climbing a staircase of knowledge, trying to get to the top where I will finally be fixed or complete.
But the shift to Roman numerals is the text telling you, you are done accumulating, you have enough tools, you don't need another framework.
Exactly. The Roman numerals represent thematic depths. If the numbered chapters are a staircase that you climb once to get to a destination, the Roman numeral chapters are a spiral that you walk forever.
A spiral.
Yes, you don't finish chapter 1 and graduate to chapter 2, never to return. You inhabit them. You circle back to the same fundamental themes: presence, physical alignment, boundary setting, addressing your handlers. But because you have grown, because you have walked further up the spiral, you experience those exact same themes at a deeper, more integrated level.
The sources use a beautiful, deeply resonant metaphor here to explain this transition. They say that the first 31 chapters were the foyer of understanding.
The foyer.
Right. We were standing in the entryway of our own lives. We were looking at the blueprints, erecting the scaffolding, talking eloquently about the house we were going to build.
But not living in it.
Right. But the transition to the Roman numerals, that is where you step out of the foyer and into the house of being. You put the blueprints away. You take the scaffolding down. You just live in the house.
It marks the ultimate shift in identity that the text has been driving toward all along. Throughout this material, we've traced an evolution.
Let's track that.
Okay, so you start out as a user, just a reactive organism, clicking buttons on the dashboard of your life, hoping for a dopamine reward, completely at the mercy of your environment and your unexamined handlers.
Then, through the dense work of the 31 chapters, you become an architect.
Right.
You map your triggers. You draw the blueprints of your relational fields. You analyze the threshold songs of your resistance. You learn the mechanics of how reality operates.
But the Roman numerals demand the final, most vulnerable evolution, from architect to participant.
Participant.
Yes. You stop analyzing the blueprints and you plug back into the vast living fractal network of reality. You co-create your environment.
You embody it.
You don't just know about embodiment intellectually. You are physically embodied in the grocery store line. The practice stops being a 20-minute meditation you schedule on your calendar and it becomes the way you breathe under pressure, the way you speak to your spouse, the way you inhabit the sheer physical space of every room you walk into.
We have covered an absolute epic journey in this deep dive. We started at the absolute baseline, the physical hardware of the fivefold path, waking the body up out of its sensory delay so it can actually perceive reality.
Yeah, huge first step.
Then we radiated out into the relational field, understanding how our nervous systems involuntarily co-regulate and mathematically influence the capacity of our connections through the synergy factor.
Right.
We zoomed all the way out to the macroscopic truth of the fractal universe, finding relief in the fact that we just have to play our single localized note in the ant colony to be perfectly aligned with the whole.
Which is such a relief.
It is. We debugged our deepest, most paralyzing resistance by dissecting the threshold song, learning to move past the immediate door, and instead renovate the rooms and handlers of our deeply held beliefs.
Yes.
And finally, we crossed the ultimate threshold, leaving the linear, exhausting accumulation of the numbered chapters to walk the lived, integrated, binless spiral of the Roman numerals.
What's fascinating here, if we look back at this entire progression, is the subtle trap we all fall into.
What's the trap?
We usually undertake this kind of intense personal development, this deep meta-awareness, because we secretly believe the goal is to become superhuman.
Oh, absolutely.
We want to become a perfectly optimized, unbothered, frictionless machine that never feels fear or resistance again. But the actual goal, the profound, liberating revelation of the text, is simply to become fully human.
Just human.
Fully alive, fully awake to the actual reality you're standing in with all its messiness, its unpredictable rainstorms, and its staggering beauty.
And so, to you, the learner, as you step out of this deep dive and back into the complex reality of your life, we want to leave you with one final, provocative thought.
Let's hear it.
It's drawn straight from that deepest, most structural layer of the threshold song. Tomorrow, or next week, When you inevitably find yourself staring at a closed door in your life, whether it's a stalled career move, a deeply strained relationship, or a creative block that makes you want to pull your hair out and you are just exhausted from pushing against it, stop.
To stop pushing.
Take your hands off the door, step back, look around the room you were standing in, look at the deep, invisible beliefs that are handling that room. What if that door isn't locked to keep you out? What if the universe is simply holding it shut until you realize you have the power to redesign the entire building?
Thank you for walking this spiral with us today.
It's been an incredible journey. Thanks for taking this deep dive. We'll see you in the Roman numerals.